Once upon a time, there was a loving young couple named Kelvin and Naomi. Kelvin was a wealthy businessman who cared deeply for his wife. Naomi conceived shortly after their wedding, and the couple eagerly awaited the birth of their first child. One day, Naomi returned from her antenatal appointment with news that her pregnancy had extended beyond the usual 9 months. She was advised to undergo a scan to determine the cause. Together, Kelvin and Naomi went to the laboratory for the scan, where they discovered they were expecting twins. The revelation brought them immense joy. The next day, Kelvin went to the market and purchased more baby items in preparation for their double blessing. 3 weeks later, Naomi delivered 2 beautiful daughters. Kelvin's mother came to help care for the newborns, Liana and Naya. As the years passed, it became clear that Naya's development was slower than Liana's. Concerned, the parents took both girls for a medical checkup. The doctor confirmed they were both healthy, but noted that Naya would be significantly shorter in stature than her sister. Back home, Kelvin's mother began treating Naomi with contempt. She claimed no such child existed in their lineage and demanded Naomi confess how many men she had been with before the pregnancy. She hinted that Liana was Kelvin's daughter, but Naya must have been fathered by a dwarf. Naomi was shocked and devastated by her mother-in-law's accusations. She told Kelvin everything, but instead of standing by her, he fell silent. Influenced by his mother's words, Kelvin became distant toward both Naomi and Naya. When he returned from work, he would bring gifts, toys, dresses, shoes, only for Liana, never for Naya. Naomi grew increasingly worried and begged Kelvin not to mistreat Naya for something that wasn't her fault. But Kelvin ignored her pleas, continued to show favoritism toward Liana, and eventually stopped paying Naya's school fees. On multiple occasions, he even made Naya sit on the floor during meals while the rest of the family dined at the table. Although both girls excelled academically, Naya was 2 years behind Liana due to Naomi's struggle to pay her tuition for 2 terms. Naya, feeling unloved, frequently asked her mother to reveal the identity of her real father. Naomi always reassured her that Kelvin was her biological father, he just couldn't accept her appearance, which fueled his cruelty. Despite the challenges, Liana loved her twin sister dearly and supported her as best she could. She often gave Naya half of her pocket money, passed on old textbooks, and offered kindness where she could. However, they couldn't share clothes due to their differing body sizes. Liana eventually graduated as a financial administrator and was groomed to take over her father's company. Meanwhile, Naya remained in school, fighting financial battles. Kelvin sent Liana abroad to further her education and, upon her return, appointed her as financial director, with one harsh condition: she had to cut ties with her sister. 5 years later, Naya graduated as a medical doctor and won a scholarship to study overseas. Naomi advised her not to return, as Kelvin had given everything to Liana. But Naya, with determination in her heart, told her mother not to worry, she vowed to make her proud. Naya's brilliance abroad earned her the position of medical director at a prestigious international hospital. Her small stature and exceptional skills gained her wide recognition. She received numerous benefits: an official residence, car, dollar-denominated salary, extended family vacations, and more. Naomi was thrilled by her daughter's success and kept encouraging her to focus on her abilities, not her limitations. Meanwhile, Kelvin and Liana had cut off all contact with Naya, refusing to acknowledge her achievements. Kelvin remained devoted to Liana, who became increasingly arrogant and difficult. Her bossy nature and pride kept potential suitors away. In contrast, Naya continued to excel in her profession with humility. She later married the love of her life, Raymond, and became pregnant shortly after their wedding. She gave birth to a healthy baby boy, whom they named Ray Jr., RJ. Naomi was overjoyed that Naya was not only successful but had also become a mother. 5 years later, Kelvin fell seriously ill with kidney failure. After trying several hospitals, he was referred to the international hospital in the city. The medical team worked tirelessly, but the required specialist was away on vacation abroad. In desperation, Liana pleaded for help. A call was placed to Dr. Naya, who was abroad on vacation with her family and mother. She returned immediately to assist. Upon arriving, Naya rushed into the ICU but stormed out when she realized the patient was her father. Liana followed her into her office, begging her to save his life. Naya, filled with years of pain, said she had no father. Still, due to her value for human life, she agreed to help. Tests revealed both of Kelvin's kidneys were failing and needed urgent transplantation. Liana offered to donate one of hers, but results showed one of her kidneys was also damaged, and she couldn't survive on the other. With only 20 hours left, Liana was ashamed to ask Naya for help. But with 4 hours remaining, Naya was moved by compassion and offered her kidney. The transplant was successful. When Kelvin awoke and saw Naya, he was enraged and ordered that she be kept out of his room. Her presence disgusted him. Naya returned to her office in tears. Liana then told their father that Naya had saved his life with her kidney and deserved his gratitude. Shocked and ashamed, Kelvin asked to see Naya, only to be informed that she had resumed her vacation abroad. Once discharged, he refused to resume a full life until he saw her, consumed with guilt. Liana pleaded with Naya to return. Naomi wept, asking her daughter to forgive her father. The next day, Naomi, Raymond, Naya, and little RJ visited Kelvin's home. Kelvin broke down and apologized to Naomi for all the pain he had caused her, emotionally, physically, and financially. He turned to Naya and begged for forgiveness for making her suffer unjustly. He thanked her for saving his life, welcomed Raymond into the family, and promised to be a loving grandfather to RJ. They all decided to let go of the past and embrace the future, choosing to live as one united, loving family once again. In the months that followed their reconciliation, the family began rebuilding what years of bitterness and silence had torn apart. Kelvin, now recovering slowly under medical supervision, made a decision that surprised everyone. He called for a family meeting. Surrounded by Naomi, Liana, Naya, Raymond, and little RJ, Kelvin stood with the help of a walking stick and said, "I've lived long enough to know that wealth means nothing without peace. And I want to set things right, not just in words, but in actions." He pulled out documents from his briefcase and handed them to Naya. "This is the deed to a new clinic I purchased in your name. I want it to be a center for children with growth disorders. A place of hope, like the one I should have created for you years ago." Naya was stunned. Her eyes welled up, but she said nothing, just reached forward and hugged her father tightly. It was the first time she had ever embraced him. Kelvin also gave Naomi full access to a new house in the city and transferred a significant portion of his assets into a trust for his grandchild, RJ. He announced that he would gradually retire and hand over his business to both Liana and Naya, equally. At first, Liana was conflicted. She had grown used to being the center of her father's world and wasn't sure she liked sharing power. But watching how gracefully Naya carried herself, without arrogance or resentment, melted her resistance. One evening, as the two sisters sat together on the balcony of their family home, Liana said, "I was wrong, Naya. You didn't deserve what you went through. And despite it all, you still chose to save him, to save us." Naya took her sister's hand and smiled. "We're twins. That bond doesn't break easily. I never stopped loving you." From that moment, the sisters became inseparable. They began working together to modernize their father's company, introducing corporate social responsibility programs that supported marginalized children and struggling mothers, a tribute to the strength of their own mother, Naomi. Naomi, now finally at peace, opened a foundation called the Naomi Initiative, aimed at empowering women abandoned or mistreated due to childbirth complications or perceived abnormalities in their children. Her story gave strength to many women who had endured years of shame in silence. Meanwhile, the clinic Naya operated flourished, drawing patients and medical experts from around the world. She launched a program that trained young doctors from underdeveloped communities, giving them scholarships and resources she never had. Her name became synonymous with compassion, brilliance, and courage. Raymond, ever supportive, co-founded an educational nonprofit that provided free science and health education to rural children, especially girls. Kelvin's health stabilized, but age eventually caught up with him. In his final years, he spent most of his time with his grandson, RJ, teaching him chess, telling him stories, and sharing wisdom he once withheld. Before he passed, he wrote a letter to Naya, which was read aloud at his funeral. "My dearest daughter. I failed you not because of who you were, but because of who I wasn't brave enough to be. But you turned your pain into purpose, your wounds into wings. If I could live again, I would carry you on my shoulders with pride from the day you were born. Thank you for being the better human, the better heart. I go in peace knowing you've not only forgiven me, you've exceeded everything I could have ever dreamed to become. Love, Dad." At the funeral, hundreds of people came. Colleagues, patients, community members, even strangers, many who had been touched by the kindness of Naya, the advocacy of Naomi, or the generosity of the sisters' initiatives. In the years that followed, the family legacy evolved into one defined not by money or social status, but by love, restoration, and healing. RJ grew up proud of his family's story, one that proved even the deepest wounds could become the roots of something beautiful. And so, from ashes, they built a legacy, not of perfection, but of grace, courage, and unity. 10 years later, the city had changed, and so had the people in it. Naya's clinic had grown into a full-fledged medical university, the Naya Foundation for Pediatric and Genetic Medicine, specializing in training doctors to treat rare childhood disorders, especially those related to growth and development. What began as a single clinic built on her father's apology had blossomed into a global center of excellence. Liana had also evolved. Her years of working closely with her sister had reshaped her into a more compassionate leader. Under their joint leadership, their father's company became a symbol of ethical business practices and community involvement. They introduced a policy ensuring 10% of the company's annual profits went directly into social programs, especially for girls in underserved communities. Naomi, though older now and a little slower in movement, remained a beacon of warmth. Her foundation had helped thousands of women across the country regain their independence after years of emotional, financial, or social oppression. She was now affectionately called Mama Naomi, not just by her biological family but by hundreds of women who saw her as a mother, mentor, and miracle. RJ, now a bright and intuitive teenager, had grown up hearing the full, unfiltered version of his family's story, not just the pain but the resilience and triumph woven through each chapter. Instead of being weighed down by the past, he wore it like a badge of honor. At just 15, he launched a podcast titled The Other Twin, where he invited guests to talk about hidden siblings, family discrimination, and stories of redemption. It quickly went viral. One episode featured his mother, Naya. In it, she said, "Sometimes, love doesn't come when you need it the most. But you must become what you were denied. I became the love I never received, and that saved me." The words echoed across social media and made global headlines. Soon, Naya was invited to speak at medical conferences, women's empowerment forums, and even the United Nations, where she addressed a global summit on inclusive healthcare and gender equity. Meanwhile, Liana got married to a quiet, kind-hearted historian named Daniel. Unlike the wealthy suitors who had previously been intimidated by her sharpness and confidence, Daniel loved her precisely for those things. He brought stability, humility, and balance into her life. They had a daughter named Kemi, who instantly bonded with her cousin RJ. For the first time in decades, the extended family began celebrating holidays together. Birthdays, anniversaries, and family reunions became grand affairs filled with laughter, music, and stories. No longer were there unspoken tensions or invisible walls between them. One rainy afternoon, Naomi sat outside on the patio, sipping tea and watching her grandchildren play in the yard. Naya and Liana joined her, wrapping shawls around their shoulders. "I never thought I'd live to see this," Naomi said softly. My daughters, both standing tall, stronger than anything life threw at them. Liana smiled, placing a hand on her mother's. You taught us how, Mama. And you forgave, Naya added. That's the part that changed everything. They sat in silence, listening to the rain fall gently, each drop a reminder of cleansing, of new beginnings.